Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you've been following us, you already know we dive deep into the most extraordinary and jaw-dropping tales involving rare coins that have changed lives forever. And today, you're in for something truly unbelievable. We're about to explore the story of a 1991 quarter-dollar coin that was once just ordinary pocket change, until it was discovered to be worth an astronomical $781 million, becoming one of the most valuable pieces of currency in history. This isn't just about a coin. It's about mystery, history, obsession, betrayal, and a twist no one could see coming. The story begins in the quiet suburban town of Durango, Colorado, a place not exactly known for minting millionaires overnight. Among its quiet streets and picturesque mountains lived a reclusive retired railroad worker named Harold McMillian. Harold was the kind of man who never wasted a penny, who saved every receipt, who still washed and reused plastic utensils. In his modest one-story home with faded green shutters, Harold had a habit of collecting coins, not in any serious numismatic fashion, but more out of superstition and nostalgia. He believed that every coin had a soul, a story. Most people rolled their eyes at that notion. But Harold, he believed wholeheartedly that it was the spring of 2021, and Harold was clearing out a dusty shoebox filled with old coins. He was planning to trade in the lot at the local coin exchange just to make space. That's when he noticed it. A 1991 Washington quarter. It looked like every other coin. Nothing flashy, nothing remarkable. But there was something odd. The coin felt slightly heavier than the others. He weighed it. It was off by a fraction of a gram. Strange, he thought. But not unheard of. Still, Harold's gut told him not to ignore it. Curiosity turned into obsession. He spent hours researching minting errors. Then he reached out to a local numismatist, Dr. Penelope Warwick, a former museum curator with a PhD in monetary history. She agreed to take a look. When she held the coin under her microscope, her eyes widened, and then her hands began to tremble. This shouldn't exist, she whispered. What Dr. Warwick had found was unprecedented. The coin bore a microscopic minting anomaly, an inverted microstamp of an eagle's talon embedded just beneath the standard D mint mark. This wasn't an ordinary error, it was intentional. And there was more. Beneath ultraviolet light, strange lines appeared on the coin's edge, lines that formed what looked like map coordinates and an alphanumeric string. This led them down a rabbit hole of conspiracy and history. After months of decoding and cross-referencing, they learned that the coordinates pointed to a remote area near Fort Carson, Colorado. The alphanumeric string? A cipher used by a secretive branch of the U.S. Treasury Department during the Cold War, codenamed Project Ember. Project Ember was rumored to have dealt with hidden caches of precious metals, artifacts, and currency stockpiled for use in emergencies, foreign exchanges, and covert operations. These caches were buried, hidden, or destroyed after the Cold War. Most were written off, never confirmed to exist. Until now, Harold and Penelope contacted a historian who once had clearance to access restricted Treasury files. That's how they got in touch with Franklin Dartmoor, a paranoid but brilliant archivist who lived off-grid. He agreed to meet, but only under strict conditions: no phones, no digital recordings, and the meeting had to happen at midnight on the 17th of September at an abandoned train tunnel near the San Juan National Forest. There, under moonlight and with a flair of theatricality, Dartmoor confirmed their suspicions. The 1991 quarter in Harold's possession was one of 5 marker coins, distributed covertly among everyday currency by a Treasury agent gone rogue. These coins were created with nanotechnology far ahead of its time, meant to hold embedded data that could unlock information about the Ember caches. Whoever held all 5 coins could triangulate the location of the largest hidden reserve, an emergency wartime reserve believed to contain more than $700 million in gold, rare documents, and priceless artifacts, and Harold had word of this began to leak in numismatic circles. At first, people scoffed at the idea. But when Dartmoor was found dead in his cabin a week later, apparently from self-inflicted wounds, though the details were suspicious, suddenly, interest in Harold's coin exploded, offers began pouring in. $1 million. $10 million. Then $50 million. But Harold refused. He didn't want money. He wanted the truth. Penelope stood by him, despite being offered professorships, book deals, and even positions in intelligence agencies. The two of them became fugitives of curiosity, chased not by the law, but by collectors, treasure hunters, and people with darker motivations. Meanwhile, a second coin surfaced in Paris. A street artist named Léon du Roche found it inside a rusted toy vending machine in the Montmartre district. Like Harold's coin, it had the same weight anomaly, microstamp, and ultraviolet signature. The race was on. Harold and Penelope knew they had to act fast. They returned to the coordinates, now armed with more data from Léon's coin, which he had shared after forming an unlikely alliance with them. Together, the three of them traced the final location to a decommissioned missile silo near the edge of Fort Carson, camouflaged and converted into a wildlife monitoring station. Breaking into a government facility, even one supposedly abandoned, was dangerous. They planned meticulously, using blueprints Dartmoor had left behind and tools smuggled from Léon's contacts in France. Under the cover of a meteor shower that distracted the skies and cameras above, they infiltrated the site. What they found defied belief. The underground vault was real. Lined with gold ingots, original printing plates from the 1800s, uncirculated currency from across the globe, and even a sealed titanium briefcase labeled Item 6A, Protocol Phoenix. They had found the Ember cache. Inside the briefcase was documentation confirming the coin's purpose, including a valuation report from 1991 listing the projected worth of the entire cache in 2025, $781 million adjusted for inflation and scarcity of specific assets. It was all real. The coin wasn't just a key. It was a contract. Whoever possessed it had legal claim over the cache, buried under so many layers of secrecy that not even modern treasury agents could fully deny it. But that didn't mean they were safe. Just hours after the discovery, a shadow unit of armed men arrived. They were not wearing any insignia, but they moved with military precision. Harold and Léon were captured. Penelope barely escaped, using a forgotten maintenance shaft. The public was told there had been a fire in the forest, a cover story to hide the military engagement. News of the cache was suppressed. Léon was quietly deported. Harold disappeared completely, but Penelope didn't stop. She contacted international journalists, whistleblower organizations, even former intelligence operatives sympathetic to her cause. Slowly, the story leaked out, not all of it, but just enough. A photo of the coin. A hint of the Ember project. A cryptic message in a foreign newspaper. Then, in 2024, at an auction house in Zurich, the coin reappeared. It was authenticated under mysterious circumstances. The final sale price, $781 million, paid in cryptocurrency by an unknown bidder. The identity of the buyer has never been revealed. Some say it was a syndicate of historians. Others believe it was the treasury itself, reclaiming what they feared might unleash more secrets. But a few think Harold himself is still alive, living under a new name, rich beyond measure, and finally at peace. As for the other three coins, they remain missing. Whispers of one surfacing in Japan, another in the sands of North Africa, and one even rumored to be inside a sealed time capsule in South America. Each one holds more than just monetary value. They are keys to a forgotten history, fragments of a grander design, and that, my friends, is how a single 1991 quarter dollar, once forgotten in a shoebox, became the most valuable coin in history, worth $781 million not just in gold or assets, but in the truth it unlocked, the legends it confirmed, and the lives it forever changed. Stay tuned for more coin legends that may be hidden right in your pocket. Next, 1986 quarter dollar coin. If you've been following us, you already know that some of the rarest coins in existence hold more than just value. They hold stories, secrets, and in some cases, entire chapters of hidden history. Today, we're diving into a tale that's bigger, stranger, and more mysterious than any we've explored before. This is the legend of a 1986 quarter-dollar coin that shook the foundations of everything we thought we knew about currency, national secrets, and the shadowy world that operates behind the scenes. At an unprecedented $865 million, this coin didn't just change hands, it changed the game entirely. It started in a place no one would expect. A small pawn shop on the outskirts of Missoula, Montana. The shop was owned by a man named Gary Eberhardt, a former high school chemistry teacher who'd quit his job in the late 90s after a minor scandal involving homemade rocket fuel, a football field, and an unintended explosion that took out several goalposts. Gary turned his passion for strange objects and old machines into a thriving little store filled with vintage tech, tools, and junk that only he seemed to understand. He called the place Atomic Relics. One cold morning in January 2022, a woman entered Atomic Relics. She was in her late 50s, dressed like she'd just stepped out of a dust storm, sun-bleached jeans, heavy boots, aviator sunglasses even indoors. She walked straight to the counter, dropped a canvas pouch on it, and said, "I need you to look at this." Gary opened the pouch and poured the contents into a metal tray. A handful of coins rolled out, mostly junk, some wheat pennies, a war nickel, a battered buffalo nickel, and 1 quarter. A 1986 Washington quarter. Gary almost passed over it. At first glance, it was nothing special. A little worn, dirty, and ordinary. But something caught his eye. There was a slight shimmer in the edge of the coin that didn't look like ordinary wear. He picked it up and turned it toward the light. There, embedded along the reeded edge, was an impossibly fine engraving that appeared only under specific lighting, barely visible letters no larger than the width of a hair. It read, S347N. PZT 9. August 24th. Orb Nex. Gary blinked. He recognized some of the language. S3 referred to a now-defunct U.S. Air Force Black Project, one of the many compartmentalized initiatives that supposedly ended in the late 80s. PZT 9. That was a kind of advanced ceramic used in highly specialized capacitors and top-secret satellite prototypes. He was familiar with it from an old colleague who'd worked at Sandia National Laboratories. ORBNEX, Orbital Nexus. It sounded like something ripped from a sci-fi novel. He asked the woman where she got it. She refused to answer. Said it belonged to her brother, who died in 2002 in a hiking accident in Arizona. She didn't want it anymore. Said it brought bad luck. She told Gary to keep the rest of the coins, but she wanted a receipt for the quarter. She wanted proof she'd gotten rid of it. Gary gave her $10 and a handwritten receipt. That night, Gary couldn't sleep. The quarter was burning a hole in his mind. He placed it under a microscope, photographed every millimeter, scanned it with a modified electromagnetic field detector, and discovered anomalies, irregularities in its conductivity, and traces of materials not normally found in circulating coinage. He called in a favor from a friend at a university materials lab, and within days, he had results that stunned him. The coin contained a core alloy never used in American minting history. A mix of titanium, ruthenium, and hafnium. Elements used in space technology, not currency. The coin wasn't just rare. It wasn't supposed to exist. Word of the coin spread like wildfire in underground collector forums. A shadowy figure using the alias, Constellation Red, offered Gary $500,000 in Bitcoin for it, no questions asked. Gary refused. That's when the break-in happened. Atomic Relics was trashed, files gone, backup drives wiped. But the coin? Gary had hidden it in the one place no one would ever think to look, in a sealed lead-lined pocket he'd created inside a broken IBM typewriter on display. Terrified but now fully committed, Gary went to the only person he knew who could dig deeper, his old friend and former colleague, Dr. Eliza Penner, a quantum physicist turned intelligence analyst who'd once worked for DARPA before becoming a government skeptic. Eliza took one look at the coin and said, "This is a marker. You have no idea what you've stumbled into." Together, they began unraveling the story behind the 1986 quarter. through a combination of declassified documents, archived patent filings, and a set of restricted aerospace manuals obtained via an anonymous source, they discovered Project Orionex, a Cold War-era joint program between NASA, the Department of Energy, and the U.S. Mint, designed to create ultra-durable, encrypted markers to be sent into low Earth orbit as part of a deep asset tracking system. But something went wrong. One of the experimental coins, never meant to enter circulation, was lost during transport in 1986. It was embedded with nanoscopic data layers containing encryption keys to an orbital asset index valued at over $865 million. The index was a ledger of sovereign wealth stored in orbital vaults, yes, actual vaults in space, used to finance covert operations without drawing attention to government budgets. That ledger had been sealed off after a rogue satellite crash in 1992. Access to the funds was impossible without the original encryption key. The quarter was the key. Whoever held the coin and could decrypt its data layer could access the orbital bank, a system so obscure, even Congress had no idea it existed. Gary and Eliza realized the coin wasn't just rare or valuable. It was a trigger to activate a hidden economy operating entirely outside terrestrial law. They had to move fast. Already, mysterious agents were following them. Cars with no plates. Drones hovering outside windows. Someone had activated old protocols. And worse, other parties had learned about the coin. Enter Viktor Karashenko, a Russian expatriate billionaire with a known obsession with Cold War tech. Viktor contacted Gary with a proposition. He knew about the coin. He knew about Project Orionex. He offered not just money, but protection, and the resources to decode the coin's nanolayers and access the funds. Viktor wanted Gary to work with him. Eliza warned him not to trust the offer. Gary declined. The very next day, his power was cut. His bank accounts frozen. He and Eliza went dark, disappearing into the Colorado wilderness to regroup and finish decrypting the coin. There, in a hidden mountain cabin, they used an improvised array of imaging tools and software to uncover the final layers of the encryption. It was then that the coin revealed its final secret, not just access to the funds, but a full log of transactions spanning decades, implicating governments, intelligence agencies, and global financial institutions in operations too dangerous to be made public. This wasn't just money. It was leverage. Eliza believed they could use it to expose the truth. Gary wasn't so sure. He feared what would happen if the information leaked. But before they could decide, a private Black Ops unit stormed the cabin. Eliza was taken. Gary barely escaped. With only the coin and fragments of the decoded data, Gary went into hiding. Over the next year, he sent encrypted messages to whistleblower organizations, academic institutions, even members of Congress. Most ignored him. A few listened. One of them, a junior senator with a background in aerospace engineering, took a risk. She helped Gary bring the data to the attention of an independent oversight committee operating off the record. What followed was a secretive investigation that spanned 8 nations, led to the resignation of 3 intelligence directors, and triggered a reformation of shadow budgeting protocols worldwide. But what of the coin? In a final act of defiance, Gary arranged an anonymous auction of the coin in an international forum for high-value assets. The listing made no reference to its true capabilities, only that it was an ultra-rare specimen with unprecedented historical value. Bidders from all over the world participated. The winning bid, $865 million. Paid in physical gold, delivered through a decentralized courier system, the buyer's identity remains unknown. Some believe it was the same intelligence agency that had created Orionex. Others think it was Viktor. Or perhaps Eliza, who may have escaped captivity after all. No one knows. The coin was never seen again, but in the years that followed, strange financial patterns emerged. Projects were quietly shut down. Unmarked satellites fell from orbit. Entire offshore accounts vanished overnight. Something was being erased. Or covered up. Gary disappeared shortly after the auction. Some say he's living in Iceland. Others claim he was taken into protective custody by an agency so classified it doesn't even have a name. Still others believe he's dead, but every once in a while, rumors surface, of someone leaving small, encrypted clues in obscure online forums, hinting at the existence of more such coins, more hidden funds, and more buried truths. The 1986 D quarter wasn't just currency. It was a Pandora's box. And once opened, the world could never be the same. So next time you check your change, remember, what looks like an ordinary coin might just be a piece of history worth more than gold, and holding it could make you a millionaire, or a marked man. Stay curious, and stay tuned. Because the next unbelievable story might just begin with the coins in your own pocket.